Welcome back to the channel. We are the Movie Marathon Men. I'm Owen Garner.
And I'm Luke Carr.
And we review films that make us go, mmm. So today we are doing the first of a series of videos that we're going to be doing. It's called Saga Wars. And in this series we're going to be pitting different sagas against each other, talking about the films that are worth watching, the films that aren't worth watching, breaking them down installment by installment. And today we're doing The Terminator. So our first thing that we're going to talk about, first impressions. So Luke, what are your first impressions to Terminator 1984?
I thought this was going to be a slightly cheesy action film, which had been slightly overhyped. People had remembered it as being better than it was.
Well, Arnie suggests cheese, so that's
cheese.
fair.
I expected cheese, and it blew me away.
Yeah.
As it did many of the characters in the film. It was tight.
Yeah.
Both in sort of runtime and sort of in like being...
The pacing is so good on the first one, I think.
It's one of the best sci-fi films, one of the best action films, one of the best sort of horror slash.
I was going to say way more horror than you expect.
Yeah.
Because I'd forgotten. So I'd watched the first three films, but years ago.
Yeah.
And I hadn't watched Salvation, Genesis, or Dark Fate. So I was excited to watch those. But I was really excited to do this rewatch because I'd seen them ages ago. Also, I feel like people forget with films like this, they're so big that they're almost too iconic for their own good.
Yes. And
people are like, oh, it's the Terminator. And everybody knows everything about the Terminator. They know the lines, they know the look, they know all of this.
And I think that's the mark of a good, old, famous film, is if the lines come up, the I'll be back, that sort of stuff. And I'm not laughing. If I'm experiencing it like the people would have experienced it at the time. It's just a good line at a good time, delivered well most of the time. We'll talk about when it's not later on. Yeah. But I was just sucked into the film. I was amazed by it on all fronts.
Yeah. So in my notes, I've also got that the effects are great for the time, and a lot of them are groundbreaking. I mean, James Cameron's a great director, but this feels like an early film for him, but in a good way. Yes. It's got a lot of charm.
You have that like lightning in a bottle thing that people talk about, where a filmmaker's hemmed in and stuck, so they can only work in a tiny budget on a tiny sort of only a month or whatever it is, with actors who are sort of desperate to prove themselves because they're not big stars yet, apart from Arnie, who's huge in every dimension. Certain dimensions the film points out we didn't need to know.
Constantly.
But it's when the director is sort of forced to do something, and they also give them such a small budget, they're kind of left alone by the studio, and they just produce something incredible because they have to.
I've always thought that limitation is such an incredible driver for creativity, because if there's so many things that you can't do, and there's only one way of doing the thing that you want to do, you come up with the best way of doing it. So I also thought that the film has loads of like fun little details, stuff like that. At one point, a character, he's really stressed and he says, "Give me a cigarette," and as he's getting the cigarette out, you see he's actually got a cigarette that's lit in his hand. Just like little character moments like that, which are really fun. They're just the sort of small touches that we miss sometimes in these big films, but the big things are done well. Everything that we need to know about the story is established really quickly, and in each action scene is both exciting, interesting and new, but also advances the plot. And I feel like the film just does that really well throughout.
Absolutely. I think as well, the sort of scariest part, apart from sort of Arnie and all that sort of stuff, is the fact that it's only 5 years away. When the humanity is already skulls on the ground.
But also, it feels really, really timely with it all being about AI.
And it's so...
that's so much of what is going on at the moment, and that is the scary thing that's happening.
And it's 40 years ago.
Yeah.
To this year.
Yeah, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Like, so far ahead of its time. And fun also that it was in 1984 that it came out.
Exactly.
A story that is about, all of this, worrying about the state and what it's going to be, and this sort of dystopian future.
No, exactly. And on your point about exposition as well, I think you obviously know that Arnie's a robot because we know the Terminator. I'm sure most people watching will know the Terminator in some form.
And I'm sure the same was true on release. I'm sure the premise was told to people,
so this is what I was wondering,
he's a robot, he's back.
They obviously don't say it. Like, he's obviously not a robot until he gets shot by someone and obviously doesn't die. But that was the first inkling that he's not just a weird naked man who has time traveled. Also, and then you see the footage from his eyes, and that's but like it's quite a way in. It's not like the end of the film, but it's maybe half an hour in that you're definitely certain it's a robot. Yeah. And the thing is, although we knew that, we would have learnt that so quickly and so effortlessly, and everything is done that way, I think, in the film. So these are the scores, the indisputable metrics on which we base what is the perfect franchise film. You have to start where the film starts, which is the story. So Owen.
I think starting at the very beginning is a very good place to start. For me, story...
It's not where this film starts.
No, it's not.
This film starts beyond this film.
It does, which is great. You get a brilliant cold open in this film. One of the most iconic cold opens that's then riffed on in the next film. But yeah, for me, story 10. I'm looking at my notes here. What a concept, brilliantly delivered. But the thing is, that's what I was talking about earlier. With we forget about how great this film is because of how big it is.
Yeah.
The concept is incredible, and from other like franchise films, they're going off already existing IP. So they're telling a story, and we know they're going to have 5 films because there are 5 books.
Yeah.
Whereas this film was so good that they're still making films now.
Yeah.
And there'll be somebody in a studio right now being like, "Oh, we now own the Terminator. Like, what are we going to do with it?"
Yeah.
Like, people are excited about that. A great concept, brilliant delivery, and great pacing as well. But also it's just really exciting and fun and original. And it did exactly what I wanted it to.
Exactly. I've just listened to you say all that, and I've looked at my notes, and I gave it a 9. And the thing is, I am going to upgrade that to a 10. I'm going to immediately break the rules of my sort of ironclad handwritten notes and adjust that, because I wrote that after seeing only Terminator 1, and then I immediately watched Terminator 2. And I didn't want to go 10 too early. But as you're saying, it hits what it needs to hit. The film genre and tone and what it like sells is exactly what it delivers. There's not a bit that you're not buying. Yeah. So it's a 10 out of 10. It's frantic and it's sort of scary and it's sort of schizophrenic and it makes you panicked. And what I think it does well, which the other Terminator films don't do as well, to again spoil opinions for later, is you constantly feel the threat of a Terminator just around the corner.
They're relentless.
Exactly, which the other films have a few more bits of sort of peace.
Yeah,
they're not peaceful.
There's far more downtime in the rest of the...
Whereas this one, you feel like it is literally at any moment he's gonna be there. The whole film takes place in hours, I think. Yeah. It's not days.
I think it's in one night, basically.
And you feel it.
So they go through, and then they do sleep, actually. And then it's like a bit more of a power nap. Yeah. It's like, let's get some sleep. It's going to be morning soon.
Yes.
So it really is. They wouldn't even smell that much because
they look like they smell.
They look like they smell.
I was going to mention this in the next point. Everyone's so sweaty all the time.
They are.
And I loved it because I'm also sweaty all the time. Give us an 8 out of 10.
I think we're going to find on the channel here right now who is going to be the sort of harsh critic and who's going to be the very generous giving out 10s across the board. Because for me, it is a 10. I've said that every character is... I can't even read my own writing there. They're great. No, every character, they have a clear motivation.
Yes.
They make decisions that make sense. They're nuanced, but really, really quickly. We don't have a lot of time with any of the characters.
Yes.
So their motivation, their background, it's set up really, really quickly, and I think really well in basically all cases. One of the things that sort of goes hand in hand with character is performance, and I think the performances in this film are great. Because it's one of these stories that just keeps going, keeps clicking, you need a great performance to ground it. Otherwise, it just becomes generic action fare. And all of the performances are great, and I think that comes from the characters being interesting.
I completely agree. The reason that I've marked it down, as I've read in my scrawled childlike handwriting, is that I wrote that Sarah Connor was a little bit of not a trope, but she was a bit sort of standard fish out of water, being dragged along, damsel in distress sort of thing.
And then
and this changes, of course.
Yeah.
And it gets better throughout the film, but that's what my initial impression was. And as it was only 5 days ago that I watched it, I'm going to have to trust myself.
What you
rather
thought.
than me right now.
Yeah. She does sort of fill the role of sort of scream queen.
Yes.
In a lot of these classic horror films, because this feels at times more like a classic horror film.
Yeah.
Like the Terminator is sort of like a slasher kind of figure, and that changes. But in this one, the Terminator definitely is like on a level with all of the sort of Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees kind of slashers.
Yeah. But who would win in a fight?
Yeah, the Terminator definitely.
He'd have to sleep to face Freddy Krueger.
He would.
Actually, I've changed my mind. He wins because he doesn't fall asleep.
He doesn't fall asleep. Yeah. So he wins.
Yeah. So that's the end of the video. We've worked out.
We've solved
who wins
cinema.
in a fight, Terminator or Freddy Krueger.
Let's go on to our next category. Production.
Okay, so I've also been harsh here, but I'll give you a very good reason why. I gave it, bear with me, an 8 out of 10. Everything is a 10 out of 10, with the very exception of one scene near the end, which I don't want to spoil, of course. I don't want to say what that scene is.
Yeah.
But it's incredible for the time that they did it. But it overreached slightly, much like George Lucas in the prequels.
Yeah.
It's incredible that they did it, but just because you could do it,
doesn't mean you should.
That's what everyone's saying in the comment section to us right now. I know.
So I mean, there's another bit. So I think I know what you're talking about, and we're going to sort of pussyfoot around these things because we don't want to spoil. I think so. For the channel, we're sort of wanting to evangelize, bring people into these films, so not spoil it. So they're not going to watch this video, and we're telling them what to watch, but also what happens and how it ends and who dies and who lives.
Exactly that, because we want someone to watch this video, especially this video, and go away and watch this film. Yeah. Other films you talk about, less so, but that's up to you, really. At the end of the day, we can't control you, just like Skynet can't control all of us.
So I've also given this an 8.
Really?
On production. Yeah.
For the same reason?
Basically for the same reasons. I think the costuming is great. The music is great. The costuming, really iconic silhouettes are created immediately. So somebody is put in a particular coat or jacket or whatever, and I remember hearing this about Star Wars character design, is that they always have to have a silhouette.
Yeah.
So you look at Boba Fett, he's got a silhouette. You look at Luke Skywalker holding the lightsaber, he's got a silhouette. Darth Vader has a silhouette. Yeah. So just a sort of basic good principle for character design is what is the silhouette. It's
the fact there are basic decisions made here that are just what's the coolest way, what's the most sensible way to show someone.
Yeah.
And then they spent 6 films or 5 films just recreating those bits because they never thought of a better way to do it.
No.
I think it's directed very well. It's not in a showy way, but it's just directed. It's cut very leanly, almost as lean as Mr. Arnold.
The governor.
He's cut very lean too.
He is. He's in great shape. Look at him.
It's
I mean, I think that's a great point. I think that Arnie looks brilliant, and I think that it needs to be said as much as we possibly can. But so there are bits where the special effects that are really reaching. Yeah. Sometimes they miss. It takes you out of what is otherwise incredible special effects wise. Loads of it still stands up today. Yeah. But there are a couple of bits that don't. So for me, that's why
I completely agree. The whole thing, I was not watching it thinking like, oh yeah, those effects are pretty good for the time, but I've been taken out of the action scene, which I do get sometimes when I watch old films. You can't really, but like James Bond films from like the sort of Doctor No era. Yeah. You see a chase and it's so obviously green screened in a car, and you can't take it seriously. They're
doing the wheel like this.
Yeah. It was nothing like that. I appreciate they're different eras, but even then, I've watched 80s films and it's the same. Yeah. Star Trek as well. I'm not going to take this that seriously because it's obviously fake. Yeah. And although this was obviously fake, it was filmed in a way that sort of suckered me in. Yeah. The only exception to that is the very beginning of the film when there's lightning going off, and this is not about the effects. The lightning's going off, and Arnie's about to appear. Minute 1 or whatever of the film, and the guy in the van is looking at what should be the most incredible thing he's ever seen in his entire life. I never will see until the 29th of August, 19. This is the most incredible thing he's ever seen. And he's just sort of looking out of his car, just... What the hell?
Yeah.
What the hell?
What's going on over here?
He sort of gets out and jogs away a little bit. And I like to think of it as just the exact reverse of that Dumbledore thing, where in the book it's Dumbledore said calmly, and James Cameron, the man screamed. And it's just said, what the hell?
So good.
They should have swapped roles, really. Michael Gambon should have been in this film.
He should have been just that truck driver, just for that second.
I was watching it.
Let's talk about our next criteria. Rewatch. For me, it's a 10.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's contained, it's exciting, it's iconic, it's original, and it delivers exactly what you want.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe the best Arnie film. That's because the rest of the films become less like an Arnie film.
Right.
This is more like it's him.
Yeah.
He's the main event. Where that becomes less. Now I've said that point, I don't know if I agree with it, but because he's got so many great films where he's so iconic.
Jingle All the Way.
Yeah.
Twins.
Junior. They're all brilliant. I did write in my notes that no, that's for the next film. No. I just remembered a point that I'd made, but I will make it later.
And that's what makes this video so rewatchable. That's why this is a 10 out of 10. It's those Easter eggs that you pick up on, because everyone's going to be on tenterhooks going, what is the point he was going to make?
It's what you have to do, you know. On the radio they say, oh, stick around, later we're going to play a song from this guy. It's, hey, stick around later, I might make an interesting point.
Stick around, I might have an opinion.
It might happen.
I gave this a 9 out of 10 for rewatchability, and there's again just one reason, same as production. I think if you're 10 out of 10, it's got to be flawless. It's got to be top set of films, maybe not like top 10, but it's got to be right up there as one of the best films ever for this sort of factor. Mad Max Fury Road for me is one of the most rewatchable films ever. Films like that where it's so lean on information that you can just throw it on, you're in the action. So the only reason there's a 9 is because there's so much exposition, there's so much world building that it's done exceptionally well. Other films that have this much world building would be lower, even if they're incredible. It might be a 7 out of 10 for rewatchability, because you've got to sit through an hour of the main character not knowing what's going on and going, what, a Skynet, a computer in a man, and you just kind of want to get to the stuff that you're interested in. So even though that's done so well, it makes it slightly harder to rewatch. Because if you're rewatching the Terminator films, you might just want to go to one where they're Terminating.
Yeah, where they're doing stuff. There's loads of them. I
would say though, which this film does and other films do sometimes, is they make you excited for the villain to do bad things.
Yes.
By making you frustrated at characters. So you're watching like, I'll try to use an earlier example in the film because it's not so spoilery. Is Sarah Connor thinks Kyle Reese is the guy that she's supposed to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And you sort of understand what she's saying, like where she's come from, but you're still like, you want Arnie to show up and like show her that she's wrong. Yeah. And I can't describe it. You're like, oh no, you just wait. Yeah, this guy's the good guy. Yeah. Like just wait. And it happens again.
This guy looks terrifying because in universe, obviously nothing like this has ever happened.
Yeah.
What Kyle Reese looks like is terrifying. Like if that man turned
a half nude man in a
trench coat, you're thinking
stalking around.
You're thinking this guy's on certain lists. But yeah,
ironically, he's on no lists.
He's on no lists. He's off grid, baby.
Yeah. It does a sort of thing where you want the Terminator to terminate, not the main character.
Yeah.
You just want everyone to understand the threat. Yeah. You're like, this guy's I know he's a machine. I know he's a Terminator because I read the title. They've not had the benefit.
They didn't come to this movie theatre like I did.
They did not, or my house, which I'm grateful for. So they don't know that Arnie's a metal man. Yeah, but you do, and they're like, get out of here with your wackadoodle, and you're like, I can't wait for you to die. He's gonna kick that door down, and it makes you giddy with excitement, and then it happens, and it makes it makes it fun as well as scary, because it's scary when it's the characters that, like when Sarah knows the threat she's under, you're scared for her. When it's dumb police officers, you're just happy to see them get walloped through walls. And it balances fun and fear. So well.
Yeah. Let's go on to our final category. Does the film have the M factor. Now, this is something that we've made up. It's for if we think a film has the sauce, we might say. And
that has something special.
It's the je ne sais quoi.
Je ne sais quoi.
It's, you don't quite know what it is. You can't put your finger on it.
It feels like a living thing.
But it's, and it's, films either have it or they don't.
Yeah.
And you know. So for me, I have put, surprise, surprise, it's a 10 for me. It's got it. Whatever it is, it's got it.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It just has it. I mean, I'd love 80s movies. On my Letterboxd, the 80s is one of the highest rated above other people. It says you rate films from the 80s way higher than everyone else. It's it's because I love them. Because even if they are dumb or bad in whatever ways they are, I love them because the 80s I think is campy enough.
They have it applies
it's
to the whole
silly.
decade. The whole if you were to give decades an M factor.
Yeah.
The
80s has it. Yeah.
2010s does not.
No.
2000s has a bad M factor.
I think the 60s maybe has the M factor, but I think less than the 80s.
I think you're right. I think it's up there as the most of the decades.
Yeah.
For me, the same. If I was to make a noise, it would be.
Yeah.
This had spades of personality.
It does.
No one uses spade though. To whack anyone with, I don't think.
Nobody uses a spade. I think spades definitely come into the franchise later on.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Someone definitely whacks a Terminator around the head with a spade.
I think they probably do.
Whereas the film whacked me round the head with its spades. It's all the way. 10 out of 10.
So our final thing. So we've given our scores out of 10. We should actually figure out what they are. I mean, mine's very high. You might have guessed. Yeah. Altogether, my score is 48. So I've sort of suggested that this is a near perfect film, only brought down by production. And I think that we're going to notice that my scores are going to be much higher than yours just as we go throughout all of this, because close 48 is high.
Mine's 45.
All right, that's higher than I
graduated some during the video.
Right, yeah.
So mine's 45. And again, it's the only ones that lose it are it was a point off watchability, 2 points off production and character.
Yeah.
But 45 makes it it's so
an incredible that's
you don't go away from this
that's an A star
without thinking that this is not one of the most recommended films you can make unless you're 3 years old. Then it's just pretty highly recommended. So exceptional round.
So our final question: watch or not, Luke? The Terminator, watch or not?
It is both a have to watch, and should watch.
Yeah, for me, it is a must watch. Yeah. I would recommend this film to anyone, including 3-year-olds. Over to you, Mr. Trivia.
That's my legal government name. I lied earlier. It's not Luke Carr.
It's Mr. Trivia.
It's Mr. Trivia. Critic reviews, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Of course, there wasn't a Rotten Tomatoes at the time, so it's retro.
So right. Did you look at what critics said at the time?
So it was pretty positive at the time.
Right.
There were criticisms for violence and stuff like that. Of course, I've got a few written down here.
Oh, really?
But
it's just good fun, Jan. Get it!
That's exactly what James Cameron said. And 12-year-old Quentin Tarantino. It was 100% Rotten Tomatoes as of Monday. Audience score 89%.
That's pretty impressive.
It's pretty high for an action film, for a horror film, for an R-rated film.
Yeah.
I imagine there's a lot of people who put it on as like a family fun film. And didn't have fun.
Yeah.
But did have a family.
Yeah.
I've got some critic reviews from the time. I think it was positive, but people were a bit sort of overwhelmed by the violence.
Yeah.
Hard to get an exact score.
I suppose the violence, we look back at it with like a sort of modern view.
It's fun and campy.
And we're like, it's fun and campy, but at the time it was horrifying.
Exactly.
Like it was so unique in its like brutality.
Precisely. So I've got 2 standout reviews here. So this is from Scottish author Gilbert O'Dare. Maybe. I can't read my own writing, so sorry, Gilbert. Although not really, because you said...
Are you sure it's not O'Hare?
There's a D in there.
Oh, right.
He said that the Terminator was repellent to the last degree. Insidious Nazification.
That's just racist because Arnie's Austrian. What? I don't think that's all right.
So that was Scottish author Gilbert O'Dare.
Oh dear. What about the character was Nazi-ish? There was no.
You didn't elaborate, or I didn't.
Yeah. I just that's a wild review. That's wild.
Absolutely. This place called Newhouse News, which I imagine was bigger at the time,
and probably newer.
It made it to the Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
So it said lurid, violent, pretentious piece of claptrap. So that was good fun.
Yeah.
More fun than they had.
Yeah.
Clearly. Yeah. But overall, it was overwhelmingly positive. Box office though, it wasn't a massive hit. It was only 21 for the year. Obviously, every subsequent one was a big deal, but the first one didn't underperform. It way outperformed its budget. I've not written down the numbers, but it was something in like 80 million on a $6 million budget, something like that. It was a massive success.
Yeah,
but it wasn't the sort of runaway smash hit.
Yeah,
that it obviously feels like it should have been.
I'm not massively surprised by that. It's the first of that series. It's a very early film from James Cameron. It's basically his first film. Arnie's still pretty new to the scene as well, so that doesn't massively surprise me. But I feel like it should be higher.
Well, with reviews such as lurid, violent, pretentious piece of claptrap.
Yeah, I mean,
it didn't attract audiences. Clearly.
I mean, yeah. So we're talking about our sort of reaction to reviews, our difference. So the modern review we clearly agree with.
Well, we're absolutely on it, right?
We're maybe slightly more positive.
So I'm only ever slightly so mine was 45, which makes 90.
Yeah.
Out of 100.
Yeah.
89 being the audience.
Yeah.
That's pretty much spot on. So I am. No complaints, please. I'm you. You made me. You're a bit more positive.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I guess
that's fine.
Trivia. He only finds 3 Sarah Connors in the area on the phone book.
Yes.
I looked up several posts like this, many on Reddit, many on deep web nerds or losers. Not like me looking it up 40 years after the fact. So that I can tell you that there should have been about 50.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
Not after Arnie had finished with them.
I wonder as if that's maybe why they'd left it at 3.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean,
because
it'd be a very
if they showed a shot of a page with 30 names crossed out, you'd be like, oof, that's a bit. And also then for within the film, you would expect it to be the most high-profile manhunt ever.
Yes,
it would be 30 women are dead.
Yeah,
all named the same thing. The FBI would immediately be mobilized. There would be helicopters in the sky, like everywhere.
Oh, it makes story sense. Yeah, but not real life sense, and that's what matters. That's what counts. Yeah. The robots are fine. It's the fact that there are only 3 Sarah Connors that grinds my gears, my human organic gears.
Yeah.
Some more trivia. Arnie insured his eyebrows in this film because he was scared they wouldn't grow back properly because they got singed off.
All right.
I assume it was the last take of the film.
Like regularly, but
they got singed off in one scene.
Right.
Involving fire.
But did he retroactively?
So I guess he knew that was in the script.
Right. He knew that he was going to be near fire. So he was able to insure them because you can't insure something after the fact.
Exactly. So not legally. Just a fun fact.
That is a fun fact.
When James Cameron wrote the script, he submitted it to his agent, and his agent told him to work on something else because he didn't like it, and James Cameron fired the agent.
The right decision.
The right decision.
Well, especially not just for this film, but for the career that James Cameron then went on to have.
Exactly, because if he didn't like this film, he would not have liked the other films.
Yeah, he would.
Maybe he was Scottish author Gilbert O'Dare.
Maybe he was.
But the pitch, the actual to get the financing.
Yeah.
How it was set up was it was a meeting with, I can't remember which studio it was, but they were all there, important people, and this was the pitch. This was it gets made or it doesn't get made. And what he had Lance Henriksen, that's it, come in, who obviously plays the sort of lieutenant, sergeant, whatever.
One of the
side piece to the
one of the cops.
Cop.
Yep.
That's the official term.
Yeah.
And he came in dressed in I've written down here, so a trench coat. Sort of pretend scars on his face, like cuts, things like that, bloody all over, foil on his teeth, and James Cameron's not in the room. It's just the important people, and he kicks the door down and sits in the room with them for like a few minutes.
Yeah,
to psych them all out.
Yeah,
and then James Cameron comes in and sends them away. And apparently it worked.
Oh, yeah.
Whether they were wowed by the script or just scared. Not because they thought that...
Just like, we need to say yes to this man.
Not that they thought that Lance Henriksen was going to kill them, but they thought the man who decided to do this will kill us.
Who sent his mate in to do that, yeah.
But then also, to get the film made itself, he had to sell the rights to someone. So he sold the rights for $1.
Right.
A single $1. Which is why all the subsequent films are not creatively controlled by James Cameron.
Right.
Other casting things as well. There was Sylvester Stallone was offered the part and turned it down.
Well, so they famously have a rivalry in Hollywood. There's very famously, like, Arnie put it out that he was going for this film so that Sly would steal it from under him.
Yeah.
And then he appeared in the movie Stop or My Mum Will Shoot You.
Yeah.
They got in a couple of good licks each way. But it basically seems that at that point they were sort of really pitted against each other. It was like, okay, we've got this film. It's going to be one or the other.
Yeah, yeah.
And which is interesting because their films to me seem really quite different.
They are. Well, Sylvester Stallone is... I don't mean this in a bad way. Sylvester Stallone is very talented. Arnie can be talented, but very doesn't have to go before it. He's very singular.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Sylvester Stallone was... I don't know if he was offered the part or if he just turned it down before that got to it. The person who was heavily pushed, I think, by the studio in charge, this is a more famous fact, was O.J. Simpson.
Oh.
And wait, so I'm glad you haven't heard this, because I had heard this before, I'd forgotten it, but James Cameron didn't offer it to him. Yeah. This is a quote. He would not be believable as a killer. So he didn't offer the part to O.J. Simpson. Did that cause what happened later?
He had a point to prove. Allegedly. We both clearly love The Terminator.
Yes.
One of the best movies of all time.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to another best movie of all time, The Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
And the kid, Anakin in episode 1.
That 80s cheese.
Like, they're either dead or they're not dead.
Really?
So yeah, don't watch that one.
Interesting, because I have written in my notes that there's one original and then the rest are terrible.
Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and comment down below which films you'd like to see us discuss next. We've been the Movie Marathon Men, and we'll see you next time with Terminator 2.